I need
Are
to
you
find
sure
the
you
first
got it on
record.
distant radio? Because I've not seen any change.
Oh, I have to reconnect just really quick. Okay, title should have changed.
There we are.
Hello, everyone. We are live. Welcome to
Yes.
Distant Radio 3305.
There we are.
This is Dangerous Cosmology. This week, once again, talking about science. This is Nightfall Zero, your host, and with me, the usual suspects. We have Selfish Pie.
Hello.
Selfish Pie, you here? Yo, how you doing?
Yes.
That Michael, as usual,
Hello.
dealing with the technical side of the broadcast.
This time
Are we
without
on-
issues.
Well, for now.
But I didn't forget anything today.
We are streaming too, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Indeed, Shank, here you are. You're not usually here, are you? Yeah, exactly. Because you're in Japan, so you usually can't make this time, but glad to see you here. And of course, as usual, well, you are talking now, so
And you are.
it's alright. I mean, I'm sure some people are doing what they do with Netflix. You know, they just wait for all the episodes to come out and then binge, I guess.
Hopefully.
But anyway, and of course, as usual, we have our Dr. Shoba. Hello, hello.
Hello, good evening.
How you doing?
Sarah.
Good, good. Difficult week. I have not seen the questions in advance at all this week. So it's all going to be improv.
Well,
That's what
That's-
we do best.
A true
Yeah.
test of your scientific might.
yeah, tonight we are talking about space travel. As we are leaving Sagittarius A star behind us, I'm actually still there. I'm a bit behind this time. For the first time, I am behind, and I need to catch up. But as we approach the other side, as we start the approach to the other side of the galaxy, it felt like a good time to talk about space travel and how feasible it is. And with the current technology or in the technologies that will be developed in the near future, what can we reasonably achieve? So we will get to the questions in a bit, but first I would like to ask Shoba how familiar you are with the subject, because I know you are not only a scientist by trade, but well, probably most scientists are also kinda nerds, in the sense that you had an interest in science and space travel, especially since before you were an actual accomplished scientist. So I was wondering if you ever thought about these things, maybe even when you were a kid, with dreams of going to space and traveling. Was it a thing in your childhood to think about space travel?
For me personally, absolutely. I was into space from the first day I knew what space was. So
Wait,
from planetary exploration to stars. I mean, when I learned that stars were balls of gas, I thought I want to go there.
in a star?
Just to see it, you know?
Okay.
Get warm there.
So when was the first time where you actually sat down and thought, okay, how can I actually do that?
Probably on the same day. I actually remember exactly where I got all my space facts from when I was a kid. I think I mentioned this in the very first episode. My first encounter with space was through a CD-ROM that came free with a pack of biscuits.
What?
Of all things, it was not TV shows or TV in general.
A CD-ROM with a pack of biscuits. What was
Back when biscuits and food had proper gifts in them and not just codes you can redeem online. There was a CD about facts of the solar system.
Huh.
And it had some stuff in there about other stars and some black holes and stuff. And I learned all the facts.
Wait,
all the facts
you're
in that
telling me
CD.
that back in the day, you actually bought biscuits and got for free educational content?
I know, right? Such a weird
Awesome.
concept nowadays.
I mean, we have. I mean, we're not progressing much in society nowadays, right?
Well, it was very promotional because the biscuit company had this mascot called the Prince, and he was traveling to all these planets.
But
there
still,
was
it's
still
fine.
like data
I mean,
on the planets.
But that's
so
how
that was
you.
pretty
That's
cool.
how you. You know, kids require some sort of encouragement to study these things, and if a mascot is required to teach proper science, I think it was a good idea. It's a shame that that doesn't happen anymore. CD or not, I don't think I ever seen a biscuits brand promoting a downloadable content of scientific stuff. I mean,
Yeah, it's pretty weird. But back then, content was much harder to access. We didn't even have Wikipedia. Well, my home didn't have a usable computer. We had a computer that you had to turn on like an hour early, and all it could do was connect to the internet, and even then, like, so slow.
so that's how you use that CD, or
I think the first time I went, no, before Wikipedia, I had a full suit of Encarta, and I read
Oh,
all the Encarta entries
I remember that.
about space.
I remember the Encarta, yeah.
It was so I think back then it sold a lot better to promote this stuff, say on a biscuit pack, because kids didn't have the internet. Now if you care about it, your parents can show you like websites about space.
That's true, but do kids care?
I hope so. Well, we still get students applying.
How
so
old were you back then?
Must have been about 7. I was actually 7.
7. You were in at primary school.
Yeah, I was 7 because for my 8th birthday, some family friends got me a telescope. So by then, I had already made it known that I was a huge space nerd. But by repeating facts about Mars to everyone, I was a very annoying kid. Did you know that the reason Mars is red is because it's rusted?
Right.
Well, I don't mean to pop in, but as someone who teaches young children in elementary school, I can confirm there are kids who are like 6, 7, 8 years old who are just avid. I mean, maybe the Japanese culture is a little bit different, but I've got students who are just avid fans of anything related to space, who will literally come into like the teacher's room and just be like, well, we get the daily newspaper, and they're like, is there anything about the Hayabusa 2? And they will collect the newspaper clippings from school about the Hayabusa 2. And
That is so cool.
Huh.
and it's like I love those kids. Those kids are amazing. I cheer
I
them
don't
on.
remember that happening in my school, but I'm not in Japan, so I don't know. Maybe I was just in a very too cool for science class. I don't know, something like that.
I can. Oh, well, I'm not gonna say I can one up all of you because I'm 17, so there's no chance of.
So you're still going to school, actually. So yeah.
Yes, but my baby cousins, I've got 2 baby cousins, and they can. Well, one of them's at the stage where they can begin to understand what things are, and one of them just is beginning to speak, and so just reacts to everything like whoa. But they were over for a sleepover, and they ended up coming into my room, and I have no idea how to deal with small human beings. And so the first
I
thing
understand.
that I
You
the
yell
first
at them
thing that
very
I did-
loudly in a foreign language that they don't understand. That's literally my job, and I can guarantee that works.
I'll
Yeah,
try
but you're
that next
you-
time.
You're also paid for that.
I am paid for that, so
Yeah.
Well, anyway, So I brought them in. Well, they came in, and I just decided to just sort of talk to them about Earth, because they'd never heard of Earth, right? They were like, as soon as I said, "Do you know what Earth is?" and they went, "No," and I tried to explain it to them. It was so cute. They had no idea what I was talking about.
That's a weird question. I mean,
It is. Again, I have no idea how to deal with young human beings. I will.
the first thing, so you see a kid, like a random kid, the first thing that comes to your mind is asking them where Earth is.
These are my baby cousins. These aren't random children. But I showed them a video of the Apollo missions, and they could not look away, and they just had so many like, obviously, like not, oh, or well, they did ask what is that, but like they had no, well, I don't know what the word is, but there was no, I'm gonna say proper questions, I guess, but they, like, I ended up telling them about Apollo and the Earth, and they loved it. They could not get enough. Well, their attention span is like 5 minutes, so eventually they got enough of it, but like, they just listened to the full thing. It was the first time that they had properly been relatively quiet, at least around me, because they were just listening. It was stuff that they had no idea even existed, and I told them, like, in the video it zoomed out, and I told them that we live on that, and they both just lost it. So it was the
I
cutest
would
thing I've
actually
ever
say,
seen.
as someone who works with, you know, young people and children, that's kind of an educational series where, you know, the human psychology develops, and the first major milestone is self-recognition. You can look in a mirror and say, "Oh, that's me," and then you start to, as you progress, what we don't actually talk about, but what we do as teachers and what everybody knows in early education, is you say, okay, you are you, and you know that. Okay, that's good, great. That's already settled. So you live in this town, and this town is part of this region of land called a prefecture or a county or a state. And then that's part of this bigger thing called a country. And then that whole country is part of a bigger thing called this world. And it's almost a natural progression of early educational psychology, of expansion, of it becomes an element of self-recognition in realizing your own place in the universe by continuing to teach them these larger levels of things, and how maybe some, you know, cynics would say how small you are in the universe, but like, personally for me, it's you are an individual, and this is how significant you are to the universe, because you exist in this huge, massive thing that we all share. But I mean, that's child psychology, so that's way off track.
And that's why I guess Japanese kids from a very young age understand that they are insignificant individually, right?
Oh, no, because there's that's a cultural thing, and that's a whole other thing we won't talk about.
I know, I was pulling your leg. I know, I was just speaking. Oh, so this is why Japan is all about, you know, communities and the bigger, you know, they prioritize the bigger group rather than the individual, because Chang is there teaching them these things.
No, Chang is there teaching them
individuality is meaningless.
Chang is there teaching them to stick out and bend and not be hammered down. So I am probably the worst teacher.
Really?
I am.
Is that even legal to teach that in Japan?
I have no idea, but I've been doing it for 10 years, and they keep letting me do it. So.
Okay.
Good luck.
This is off topic again, but it's just as fucking-
Sorry. Yeah, I know. Sorry, we're just bantering at this point. We will get to the actual space travel, but it is actually interesting. I mean, I started with a simple question, which was indeed off script, but because I was just interested in hearing about how early our doctor started to develop actual interest. Because I mean, she's still young. She's you're. Sorry?
Well, to be fair, I realized when I started doing research that I was actually the minority. So you'd be surprised
What do
that
you mean?
most actual researchers are not space nerds. Especially astrophysicists. I think the majority of them come to it because they like maths and hardcore physics. And they like solving puzzles that are hard.
I don't know. I would say that loving maths and doesn't it qualify you as a nerd anyway?
Well,
I mean,
I was actually
Not
gonna.
a space nerd.
I was actually gonna agree. Yeah, like my father, who's a physicist. It's like the physical sciences where it can be applied directly and immediately is what a lot more people are interested in.
no, when I say nerd, I'm not saying, oh, you're a Star Trek fan or something like that.
That's
No,
a
but
geek.
knowing facts about space. Like, a lot of my colleagues don't even know the constellations. I was very disappointed. Like, they work on black holes far away and they solve, the equations of general relativity. But they can't point to you where the Cassiopeia constellation is. They have no idea. Because that's not what they care about. They care about the hard maths puzzles and nothing else.
And
Oh, yeah, I hear
what-
that
what-
people
like,
can't do
focused
that. I
people.
mean,
what's ironic is that as an English student and a linguist, I can tell you where those things are because I studied culture and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think physical scientists have a tendency to only like what they're doing.
Yeah, I guess if you over specialize, some things you just don't care about.
It's not even that, is that maybe they achieve more because their brains are so focused on one thing. They have no space in there for general culture.
Right.
I mean, some of them, that's what it feels like.
How do I don't know. How do I tie my shoes? I don't know. I have no room in my brain for that.
use Velcro.
Solving the universe. So stuff like that.
But I was quite surprised, actually, by this when I started actually working in it. It doesn't seem to be the majority who are also space nerds.
But in your case, you started young.
Yeah, I did.
And you are, for all intents and purposes, both a nerd and a geek, in addition to a scientist.
You bite the heads off
That's even
chickens?
rarer. What?
Sorry, what?
No.
Where did that come from?
The
I
term
didn't get that.
the term geek actually comes from 1930s to 40s, like Depression era, like circus carnival performances, where a geek was someone who would actually basically choke a chicken so that its head would extend. They would bite the head off the chicken.
Oh, okay. I don't do that.
I never heard of that.
You brought a linguist on the
see-
show, so you're gonna get weird shit like that.
You know that technically I'm a linguist too. I just don't know this kind of trivia, I guess. But
Yeah, no,
technically,
it's an American
I-
it's an American like farm cultural thing, but
yeah,
but
okay,
getting
if
back
it-
on
if it is
track,
a-
you were talking about travel, and I think that's actually pretty apt because we are a group where I'm an American living in Japan, and we got people in Europe and North America and all over the world right now, and yet in this moment we are all communicating together, but we can't actually physically interact. And
Well, I mean,
travel-
I could probably say some crap about the butterfly effect. I could.
No,
No, no, no, no, no,
I
no.
would
We're not bringing philosophy into this.
Strictly speaking, we do interact physically. I mean,
Well, we do because
even
gravity
data is physics.
exists, so...
Yeah, also data is physics.
Yeah,
Yes.
if you want to be technical, yes.
Yeah, this is a
Yes.
technical show, so why not?
We are using
Okay.
engineering right now to communicate using satellites and electrons which is applied physics.
So
Boom.
even at this distance, we are technically all inside each other.
I'll remind you I'm 17.
Curious fact.
In a
thing
way.
is, we're using electrons from which we don't know where they actually are, or how
And
fast they are
photon,
moving.
right? I assume we all have fiber here.
Look. If you go far back enough, we're all breathing dragon piss, so none of that matters. The point is the future. Where are we going next? Alright.
Very
And
good
Off on
segue to
topic.
keep us on track.
speaking of that, we can take the first question after wasting like 20 minutes bantering. But it's all fun. I hope that listeners are somehow having fun as well. But as usual, we are taking questions live in the Discord channel of Distant Radio, in the Dangerous Cosmology channel, and of course, as usual, in the Astronomy channel on the FleetCom server. So if you have questions while you're listening, feel free to drop by and ask our doctor. And of course, as well, I always forget, but Twitch and YouTube, they are also monitored.
Yeah, I'm
So we take
watching
questions
those.
there as well.
So.
Indeed. So the first question we have for tonight is from Scaleus, and he's asking, which would be more expensive between researching the possibility of the currently impossible faster than light travel, or researching human life extension plus freezing humans for extended periods of time so that I guess they could be shipped to long distances without FTL travel, or teleportation. Assuming that this, first of all, which one of these, if any, can be ruled out as currently physically impossible as far as we know, and after that, among the ones that are possible as far as we know, which one is the most feasible in terms of monetary expenditure?
Well, I'd say currently, what do we have? Faster than light travel, cryogenics, or teleportation are all
assuming
equally impossible.
Cool. Next question.
None of them are even close to being feasible, and no amount of funding will guarantee they're done in time. So they're not. Neither of them are a clear, reliable thing to fund.
Yeah,
at the
let me
moment.
just add, because Kalaios is rightly so pointing out that I missed the second half of his question, which is that he is not expecting concrete answers because it is currently impossible to determine what needs to be researched. But it is more, he's asking more about the pros and cons and potential ramifications. Of course, we are borderline into sci-fi here, but
Not that far off. So let's go through them in order. Faster than light travel, theoretically allowed by general relativity, well, apparent faster than light travel. What it does is not speed up faster than the speed of light by accelerating, but rather by bending space, either through a sort of wormhole or through a more advanced techniques like the Alcubierre drive and that kind of stuff. Well, we don't know if that's even definitely possible in theory yet. Even if we could build something like a wormhole, the equations are not completely clear on whether it would be stable to go through. It's possible that as soon as you put matter onto it, it would close and collapse. So even in theory, it's not clear if it's possible. And on top of that, to ever make it happen, you would need some sort of negative mass, and we have no idea what negative mass is. So it's an unknown how long it would take to achieve it by funding.
I've not actually done the maths myself, however. I saw a YouTube video on it, so obviously I am an expert on it. No. But is it true that to open a wormhole open to approximately the area of a door, that would take in as much negative mass as the moon has regular mass?
More, actually.
Right.
To open and maintain it for more than, say, a split second, it would take more. Even the cost of an Alcubierre drive, which is the most efficient one, where you basically you surround your ship by a warp bubble, and you compress the space in front and you expand the space behind, sort of surf along space-time. Even that would take at least 1 Jupiter's worth of negative energy.
Yeah, but it
just
was
to get going.
much more before, so bringing it down
That's
to
just
that
to get
mass
it
is
going, just to
actually...
get the shape. Yeah, just to get the shape of the warp bubble. Then to accelerate the warp bubble, it would be many, many times more. If, of course, negative mass is even a thing. So that's not something you can throw money at and make it happen. It's just not there. But still sci-fi. No, not yet. And the other two were teleportation. Plausible, but not not handy if you want to visit a faraway star. Sorry, that was me.
Something fell.
Yeah.
Ignore it.
And there's no buzz.
The problem with teleportation
what?
is...
Sorry?
Huh?
I think
are you guys
those
okay?
buzzes, these buzzes are what's it called? Vibrations from your desk or something.
It's
Is
my
it made of
laptop.
metal?
Ah.
I will put it on my lap instead of the desk. That should be better.
I don't know.
I have a loud laptop.
I don't see many things vibrating here, but we'll see. If there is a significant disturbance,
Yeah,
we'll do something.
it is no disturbance.
All right. So sorry, you were saying?
Teleportation is something we are currently researching, but the only type of teleportation that's allowed by the laws of physics as we know them is the Star Trek type. So you make a copy of your information at the point you're trying to go to. It's not like you don't go through the space in between. You turn your body into information and you reconstruct it from information on the other side. It's quantum teleportation. It's not magic. So even if you could transform your body into energy, you would still need to have something on the other side to receive it. You can't just go somewhere where you don't have the materials to rebuild it.
Even
We are
then, people
starting
don't
to
like.
have some success with that.
Yeah, I mean, not everyone realizes that in systems like in Star Trek, they actually kill themselves every time they teleport.
Took
and they
the
just-
words out of my mouth.
They're just recreated on the other side.
Well, they kill a copy. Oh, there's numerous sci-fi stories about that, about which copy is the true copy, which
Yeah, no, but from our perspective, our current perspective, where such a thing is just impossible, we are one, and there is no copy of it. We identify ourselves with our physical form. Our brain can't even conceive how we could have copies, because how would that even work? You wouldn't think that your copy is you. It's just an identical creature, but it's not you. You would still have an identity which is tied to your physical body that you're inhabiting. But apparently in such a universe, people would just go beyond such primitive views and stop being attached to their individual shape, I guess. I don't know. For me, it's difficult to imagine.
Yeah, you are your information pattern. You are not your atoms.
Yeah, but that is not something easy to accept if you think about it.
No, I'm sure there would be lots of religious people refusing to teleport and that kind of stuff, because your body is your atoms.
Even psychological effects doesn't have to be religious. I think our brain is not designed to assume teleportation as a normal occurrence.
Our brain isn't designed to allow us to die. And so when it comes to like,
that's one way of teleportation theory,
exactly.
but there's the other also used in Star Trek, of course. That's phasing. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept that you can.
I thought phasing was still the same scientific principle. It still carries your information, like when they recover phaser data from
No, I mean
different teleportation drives.
Not phaser data, but phase shifting.
I think I know what you're talking about. It's technically speaking, or well, mathematically speaking, there's two ways to teleport. There's the one we're talking about. We called it quantum teleportation. I'm actually going to call it molecular teleportation, like information. And then there's also quantum teleportation, where it's like it sends your information, but it is exactly you. It's a quantum clone. Like quantum clone, what you're talking about as being a phase, is impossible, because a quantum clone is essentially another version of you with the exact same atoms. That is
I'm not
mathematically
talking
impossible.
about replication. I'm actually talking about
Oh,
you
right.
being shifted out of phase, so you can pass through physical objects, and then when you're at your destination, you will be realigned with the actual real world phase. I will call it for now. That then, yeah,
Yeah,
actually
well,
makes you kind of rematerialize, but you didn't dematerialize.
there
I
is such a
think
thing as phase in quantum physics, but it doesn't work that way. It's not
I think
something you can ever control. So that's far into the
Well,
sci-fi.
phasing in that sense would be just somehow modifying your natural electromagnetic field so that somehow it doesn't interact with the wall's electromagnetic field and you just pass through it, like a bit like do neutrinos do. They just ignore the wall and go through.
And
But
there's no advantage to that. If you think about it, if you store your information into electrical signals, you can travel down any wire. So it's still at the speed of light that you're moving. Well, if you just phase out, you can still only walk at normal speed, I assume.
I know what you're talking about. Are you talking about like you physically moving, but it's the same version of you, just you have legitimately like teleported in the first idea of the sense of teleportation,
Well,
where you
w-
legitimately just change position?
the best
Yeah.
analogy would probably be witch space.
Right.
you step into another dimension for a brief
That's
moment.
exactly
Yes.
what I was going to get on. That would not work because
That's not how
um,
phase space is supposed to work. I'm sorry, it's not. Phase is something that exists in quantum mechanics. It's nothing to do with additional universes or additional dimensions like witch space. Phase is actually a thing that exists mathematically. And it's
Okay.
why, for example, quantum systems stop being quantum. They go out of phase with each other. So say you have Schrodinger's cat in a box. One version dies, one version doesn't die. It stops being both because the two versions go out of phase. It's basically the driving principle behind the many worlds interpretation. So you
Wait.
only see one, you see the one that's in phase with you. That's the entire point of the many worlds
Oh,
interpretation.
okay. So
oh,
by out of phase,
That's more
it's
precise. Yeah.
by out of phase it simply means in another universe.
It means it's the other branch that you stop seeing for a while. And if it goes back into phase, you will see the interference of that thing with you. You become able to interact with it again if the phases aligns again.
Yeah. Like
That
ghosts of sorts.
is that possible to get back into phase?
Well,
I mean,
that's how you get electron interference patterns. When you fire electrons at two slits, one version goes through the left, one version goes through the right, but they don't diverge enough and their phases realign, giving you the pattern that you see.
okay, I don't want to get back into quantum physics because I really like talking about it, but this show is not really about that.
Yeah.
But
So
I mean,
Hmm.
it's maybe we will do a rehash of quantum physics a few weeks down the line because I don't think we have explored everything about it.
But I think in sci-fi, phase shifts are a bit generic. It just becomes something you can't interact with until later when you can.
yeah, it's a
Basically,
plot device.
it's very generic, right? It's implemented in different sci-fi ways in different games.
Yeah, I think in sci-fi, whenever they say phase, they just mean becoming intangible temporarily and then
Yeah.
becoming tangible,
Yeah,
rather
that's
than
exactly it.
yeah,
Non-corporeality.
Which is based
Yeah.
on an actual concept. It's just what exactly they interpret it to be is different.
hmm
But anyway,
I think
teleportation is still not practical because you can't travel faster than the speed of light with it. And the only version that's actually being researched and we know how to do it is information teleportation. And so far, we only transported gas states. So, so you have some gas in a box, you want to copy the state it's in to another box somewhere. So the best we can do is gas currently.
oh yeah, we've
For-
already done it on like really like legitimately tiny scales, like atoms, like single atoms. Yeah.
And
Whereby-
gases. It works in a distribution
Right.
kind of way. Currently, we can only reproduce the distribution of stuff, not individual atoms even.
Right.
But it's starting. Maybe in 100 years we can do a microbe. That's the kind of scales of research we're talking about. But at least there's
Don't
money
like
to throw at
those
it.
time estimates.
It's it's the sci-fi of today. It will be the science of tomorrow.
Yeah, as always.
Yeah, I
there's
was
another,
wondering if
concept from Star Wars I was wondering about, and that's subspace, which is being used to transmit, information for the most part. But I
Ye-
think it's also related to the warp technology in Star Trek.
That always
Are you-
confused me in Star Trek. I feel they don't use it enough. I mean, it's basically an almost instant internet. And yet they manage to be isolated from each other so often. Like, why don't they just have a smartphone that goes onto subspace? I don't know.
Yeah, I would. I would have to be able to explain the concept of subspace before I would be able to answer that.
I think subspace is just one of the things that has been derived from creative license. I don't think it's based in anything, because it's essentially just an excuse to allow faster than light travel. Like in Mass Effect, they magically reduce the mass to 0 and turn to the speed of light, and nothing bad happens because of this special thing that they've made up. I think it's I think it's just what was the word I used? I can't remember the word. Just a subject of creative license.
Well, Mass Effect isn't that bad. The physics in Mass Effects are better than average. Come on, I'll defend Mass Effect any day.
Yeah, me too.
That's probably a separate topic.
Also, it's an amazing story, so.
Yeah, I mean,
I
we know
have-
that
yeah.
we know that every option we currently have is in sci-fi is obviously unfeasible, because if it was feasible, we would have, we would have it in real life.
Well, no, there is one thing that Skeleos didn't mention. One thing that we can throw money at and have it done in 5 years.
The FSD.
No, not the FSD. Not teleportation, not even cryogenics, which definitely does not work with current
More
technology.
powerful rockets.
No, it's generation ships. We are at the stage where we could build a generation ship if we really wanted to.
Yeah, that's boring.
Yeah, but it's a sci-fi thing that is at the edge of doable. All it needs is
It's
funding.
boring. It's the most
It's not
exciting
boring.
thing
I
can
don't
think
want
about.
to. I don't want to be the Quarians of Mass Effect. They're boring.
But
All
they're pretty good.
All a generation ship
Tally's the
needs
best.
The
is
migrant fleet is superb. It's an achievement of its own.
all a generation ship needs is. Sorry, I'm. On you go.
Oh no, my question is then to Nightfall. You don't want to be part of a generation ship, but how?
Look, I just like
how much
playing
more-
devil's advocate in this.
I know,
mechanic.
and I'm gonna play another alternative view built on the human element of it. How much more significant does your genealogy become when it is represented in traveling to the stars?
That's a
How
fair
do you mean
point.
that?
I know he's saying that
When it's
how
your DNA
significant
chain,
our genes.
when
Yeah,
it's your
I mean,
DNA chain that is out in the stars that represents us, how much more significant do you become?
well, first of all, I don't think they will ever pick me for that. That would be a very poor choice.
Well, they
But-
wouldn't.
I
They
don't
wouldn't
think
pick
it
me
would
for
even
damn
based
sure.
on
I
what
know
you
that.
want.
There's no
The
doubt.
thing is, with the people they send up for, they choose for such a generation ship, those are most likely not going to survive the trip. So it's doesn't actually matter who you are.
Oh
as
no,
long as you have
you're talking
offspring.
about their grandchildren, great grandchildren, great great grandchildren. Generation ship. That's what it means. You're talking about 3, 4, 5 generations down the line.
No, I mean, what? It depends on the
Generation
reason.
just goes there to die.
Okay, first of all, let's just sorry guys, let's just backtrack a bit so that, I mean, we should all be familiar with what generation ships are, but just to recap, if I understand correctly, a generation ship is just a very large, like ark or colony ship of some sort that transport a large amount of people.
It's a floating city
And
that
it
moves
is-
through
it is-
space.
Optimally
It is
hundreds of
expected-
thousands of people.
It is expected to just see generations of people born on it and die on it, so that you would have entire generations that live their entire lives on a ship and never saw the actual starting planet or the arrival planet. So you just ignore the problem of traveling fast because you just embrace the concept of slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah, pretty much.
So that is what it is. And my take on it is that it depends on the reason. Because I believe that we were talking about Mass Effect, and I don't remember exactly if that is what happens in Mass Effect Andromeda in a sense. Because they send out the ship to Andromeda and they just it takes, I don't remember how many hundreds of years.
Wait,
before-
which
before
one?
it arrives.
Oh, Andromeda's
Only
the
400
Andromeda's
years
the
ago.
bad new one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the plot is
Yes.
is
The
that
less good one.
Okay, no, so
think-
so
Yeah.
actually,
And,
in Andromeda, they had cryotechnology. It was
but
a
it still
was a
takes,
generation ship. So like, if you remember, the main character, his or her father, was the original Pathfinder. Is that the term, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And the Pathfinder was awake and basically adjusting the plot occasionally. So in Andromeda, they had cryotechnology, but it was still a generational ship. So the main character you play as was born on that ship long after it was launched.
No. Wrong. The main character wasn't born on the ship. He was actually all grown up before they left. The Pathfinder isn't awake the whole trip. The Pathfinder only is awake periodically.
Yeah, I think he wakes up periodically,
back to
automatically.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because so it's
sorry,
but it
it's
still
it's
takes-
not what I
supposed to
played
survive.
because everyone said it was so bad that I was just like, I'm gonna walk away and not.
Yeah, I
touch it.
don't
so
want-
bad. It's just not a worthy follow-up for the Math.
yeah, I don't want to get into that, but I agree that it just had the problem of carrying the legacy of the name. But if it wasn't for that, it would be a decent game. But
That's
again,
that's
I'm
literally
not
what everybody
delving into
says.
that.
Actually, that's
Um,
like people who give it like they're like it's a 6, it's a 5 or a 6. If it didn't have the Mass Effect name, it would be a 7 or an 8.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. Anyway, so yeah, no, so that is not the generation ship, right? Even if it takes hundreds of years.
Yeah, no,
That's a
that's cryostasis or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So
there are generation
anyway,
ships in Elite, you know?
yeah, there are, but no. What I was going to say at the start before I diverge into Mass Effect is, it depends on the reason why we would send such a ship.
Oh, the reason
Because-
is very simple. If your objective is to reach TRAPPIST-1 as quick as possible, that's the answer. We don't know when we'll be able to travel faster. It's a huge gamble.
No. What I'm saying is that you see and read in some sci-fi stories that, like, for some reason, Earth becomes inhabitable or gets destroyed, so you have no other choice but to actually go on this trip. So it's not really out of a choice, but it's out of survival. You have to do that. Oh, I don't know. There is an asteroid coming to Earth, and there is no way to destroy it or do anything. You just evacuate the planet. Or it may be a choice where, like you say, oh, we have that planet there. Let's gather up a few people and send them, and we will never hear from them again because it will take them 2,000 years to get there. So hey, it depends on the reason. This was to answer Chang's question because.
Well, of course, because my argument is going to be the reason that our genetics are predisposed to proliferate. We want to spread our genes, and as human beings, as the apex, predator or evolutionary apex of our planet, the only step we have further is
back
other
that.
planets. It is the next step is interplanetary, and after that step is interstellar. That's just my personal opinion as someone who, you know, looks at sociology and human psychology.
I'm not sure. I mean, I see where you're coming from, and we will hear the doctor's opinion on it. But my guess is that it is a bit maybe arrogant to assume that since we are at the top of the food chain on Earth,
Oh, it's absolutely
supposed to
arrogant. No,
expand.
it absolutely is.
No.
It is the most arrogant thing in the world. But that
I'm
is
saying
what keeps us
our
going.
brain and our entire being was born to just survive in the plains of Africa where we were born initially, and that's all we are designed to be. I mean, we are not made to survive in outer space. Everything in space kills us
We're
very
not
quickly.
made to survive in cities.
I don't know. I'm
We
living in a
just
city now.
adapted
But
to
we're not
adapt,
made
yeah.
to survive in cities.
Yeah, but the planet is not hostile by nature. We exist on this planet because the planet allows
No.
us to.
Cities are hostile by nature. There are places where you can't get your own water, you can't hunt for your own food. No other animal would survive in a city. We survive in
Cities
cities
are-
because of society.
I mean, you have the termite mounds in Africa, and massive
Yeah,
collectives
but
of
humans
of,
were not made for it. If you wanna call it made.
Well,
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 sure,
that's the argument then is, and that goes into a sociological and historiological argument of, did cities make the modern man, or did modern man make the cities? And that's
It's both, isn't it?
it's both in my it's kind of like in my opinion, yes, it is both. I agree. It's that nature versus nurture, and it's like there's no versus. Both of these things had elements in creating who I am as an individual.
I think modern human beings. Okay, what are the natural instincts of human beings? And there's a bit of a story. No, what am I trying to say? Give me a second.
Oh no, not a problem.
Look, all I was
So-
trying to say is that. Sorry, go ahead.
So, what are the basics that human beings need? Food, water, well, reproducting to survive. But what can these all be boiled down to, just to make it simple? Human beings are designed to make their own lives easy. Now,
Not every animal
what
is.
does
Yeah,
that
of course.
mean?
That's biology.
what does
Existence.
that exactly? What does that mean to the species like humans that is not technically apex predators, but are effectively, globally speaking? That means that we figure out ways that we can hunt less. That's what growth was. We figure out ways to make more growth. That was what expansion was. That brought villages around. We figure out how to make those villages a lot more connected so that we can have access to every other person's resources. And eventually, on that scale, you don't just get villages, you get towns. Towns, villages. I don't know the full technical, like, geographical cartographer thing, but essentially what it boils up to is cities are the amalgamation of thousands upon thousands of years of human laziness. And
Oh, there is a sociological argument that massive metropolitan regions and groupings of people is an inevitability in any self-aware species.
and ultimately, and you bring up a very good point, but I'm just gonna continue with my analogy so that we can
That might
properly-
offend or insult people, but that's just what it is. That's what I know, at least what I've read. So, if I'm wrong, DM me, send me the scientific text.
Don't.
I mean, we should all be happy to be wrong. I'm most.
I look
likely
forward to
wrong.
being wrong. I genuinely do.
Well, I mean, it allows people to grow. That's the entire point of. Well, anyway, ultimately, and all right, I should clarify. I am fine with being wrong. This is my subjective opinion, but cities are the amalgamation of human laziness. But it's now at the point where there's so many people in the background making sure that the city works, that the people who live in cities and towns and other such things like modern towns and cities, those people are designed to work with the way that society has arose rather than to survive. Because originally, towns and cities, they were built to make survival easier.
You're getting dangerous. You're getting dangerously close to sheeple meme territory. I'm a dick. I am the most offensive person on the radio, and even I will say, like, you know, you might be right. I'm not gonna say you're wrong or anything, but
Oh no, feel free to.
You're getting into that region of you know, you're getting into the region of saying that the African termite mounds is not only an inevitability, but is actually representative, and that the people who live in that kind of circumstance will perform in that manner of behavior. Sheeple.
I can see what you mean, but I don't. Oh well.
And
Actually,
I'm defending you. I'm saying you're not trying to be offensive to anybody. You know, nobody's trying to offend anyone who lives in the city. You know.
Oh, I live in a suburb. I'm essentially like I'm nearly part of the problem. Well, it's not a problem. No, it's not. I'm bad at vocabulary.
Oh, I teach English, and so am
I don't know.
so no
I
problem.
still believe that. I still believe that. I understand the laziness argument, but it's not like building a city or even maintaining it is easy. Okay?
Exactly.
There's people working for that quite hard. Of
Mhm.
course, some people are just profiting from it, but most of us, in a sense, well, I guess most of people who live in a city actually work to live in a city.
Yeah.
They're not lazy. Maybe if we were still living in a cave and only going out to hunt, maybe
Well.
some. I mean, I think we just changed the kind of effort that we put into survival.
That is what I mean. This is what I mean by poor vocabulary. When I say lazy, I mean like lazy as in we don't technically have to do much to survive. However, to remain alive in a global society of money, we do need to work and put a huge amount of effort into getting money to then get what we need. But the actual process of getting what we need is designed to be lazy. Not
Yes, so survival moved to a higher level in a sense. We don't go around hunting for boars to get food. Okay, we just go to an office and get money to go to the supermarket. But
yeah, exactly.
the cost is the same.
But we keep
It goes beyond that. It goes beyond the concept of money. It's just human experience of saying, I can do this thing, and I'm going to say my effort is worth this, and I'm going to trade my effort and my work for, you know, this piece of paper, because all you can give me is an equal effort in return. You can't give me eggs and bacon that I need to have a good breakfast.
Yeah, sorry, Michael was indeed correct. We are digressing. Were you going to say, Shaba?
I think these things are massively overthinked. In the end, society is just the way people made it, and that's all there is.
And that's the
This
final
reason-
answer from the doctor, so now we can move on.
Yes.
There's reasons
and-
why we made it this way, but it's mostly chaos that works.
Exactly, it's chaos that works. Now,
Woo!
yeah, I know, I am the
Actually,
host. It is my
speaking on
fault we are
chaos-
digressing, and it's...
Speaking on chaos,
Don't-
I had
please.
a question
What?
that actually
Is it
had to do
pertinent?
with travel.
Cool. It is space travel.
It is space travel. So when we measure our position in space and how we move, no matter how we do it, what is our 0 point? What do we declare as our start position versus our arrival position? Because like when you
Anything
when
you
you have a
want,
plane
really.
ticket, it's easy. You're like I get on a plane at Osaka and I fly to San Francisco. Okay, I got my start, my finish. What is our start if we're talking interstellarly to other stars? Is it gonna be will that potential future be on Earth, or will that be something that has to be in space and developed there outside of, you know, the Earth and its near
Well,
gravity
I think it's
effect?
much like. It's probably much like in Elite, actually. You can fly anywhere you want. It doesn't really matter where you want to go. For some types of interstellar travel, like the Alcubierre drive we mentioned earlier, you cannot steer once you start. It's a bit like witch space. So you have to pick a direction, but you can define that direction towards any point that you see. You'll still go in a straight line there. And by straight line, it means compared to your local space-time. So say you wouldn't drift, say because the galaxy moves compared to a different galaxy, that would not affect you because your local space-time is dominated by the gravity of the galaxy, which is only rotating very slowly. So that's all that you would feel as a ship.
No, but that is actually, I think, what... Because Calais actually is expanding on it in the sense... Yeah, the thing is, when we are on Earth and we buy a ticket and we fly, we more or less can in our minds trace a line and say, okay, I went from Osaka to San Francisco, and if I know geography, I can more or less picture in my mind the track that I traveled. I can just see the line and okay, so I went from there to there, and the point where I started is still there. Okay, Osaka is still there. I can look where I come from,
Yeah,
and since I am moving with the planet,
yeah, that's fine.
it's relative to me. It's still in a fixed position.
But it's the same
While-
in space. So when you're on Earth, your local space-time is dominated by the Earth because it's the heaviest thing. If you're in outer space in the Milky Way, your local space-time is dominated by the galaxy. It's the same principle. You don't change with respect to the thing you're on.
Not really, because the galaxy moves. It's not like a solid object. The galaxy itself is not a solid thing. It's just a set of things.
Right,
You know,
but,
so
the gravity potential is moving very, very slowly if you're just floating in space.
So gravity is the reference point, the reference criteria.
Space-time, the local curvature of space-time is your reference.
Right.
If you could measure it really accurately, you would feel more pulled in outer space towards the center of the galaxy. It's very weak, but it's very nearly flat. And because it's very nearly flat, it also means you wouldn't miss by much. But you can calculate these things. It's not... That's exactly what GR is for. General relativity tells you exactly how to mathematically calculate where you have to point and where you will end up. We have a whole theory to do those calculations.
But that's how GPS works. Yeah, of course. But
Sometimes you have to overshoot a bit, just like a plane. The plane has to account for the rotation of the Earth, even if you don't realize it. It's faster to go one way than when you come back. So
Oh,
the
yeah,
calculation
it's-
systems of planes work that out too. It's the same in space, except with much more difficult maths.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, anybody who's traveled, you know, it's 11 hours going from Japan over to America, but coming back the other way, it's 13 hours. Even if it flies
And
along
a big
the same
part of that
path.
is the winds.
and there's of course the winds and all the atmospheric disturbances and all that good stuff. Fun times.
No,
So
but
space time.
I would say
Yeah.
that the beginning and end point of an interstellar travel, you said the technical point where you begin your journey is at the airport on the runway, right? And you have technically the runway after you are successfully flying.
Yeah.
In my
sure.
opinion, the beginning point. And then when you touch the other runway and you've landed and you've stopped, well, not necessarily when you've stopped, but when you've stopped, that is the end point. Applying
Yeah.
that a similar sort of logic, I would say that the beginning of an interstellar travel point, the beginning of an interstellar journey would be when you have enough energy to escape the sun's significant gravitational field. And the end point would be when you were in orbit of another star's, when you entered and were successfully in orbit of another star's significant gravitational field.
Well, that's your opinion, but you
Yeah,
could take
it's arbitrary.
you could
Right.
take the Earth atmosphere as your landing pad and take that as a starting point. The moment you leave the atmosphere, then just depart, or the gravitational pull, or I don't know, whatever. It's
arbitrary.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, your mind can't easily picture that because the runway of a plane where you started is still there, and it hasn't moved.
Well,
But if you start and when you arrive, you look back and guess what? The Earth is no longer there.
Well,
It's-
I don't know. It has moved, right? When you fly from one city to another, it only looks like a straight, logical line to you. Actually, the Earth has gone around the sun. You just
Yeah,
don't
but
see it,
compared
but
to
the
you-
runway isn't literally where it used to be.
Compared to you, yes, it is.
Yeah,
Because
and that
you
would
are
be the
moving-
case of planets too. If
you're
you fly
moving-
from one planet to another, the previous one will still be there in the distance, just like slightly off, maybe.
It's like, well, you get my point.
I don't think it's a problem for anything.
Nah, it's just. I don't think it's a problem. It's just harder to picture. That's all.
Well, in the end, what matters is that you can plot a course. You pick a star, and the equations of relativity will tell you how to plot the course to get there. It will not be as logical and simple as a straight line. It will be some weird, curvy path accounting for the changes in gravity, the rotation of the Milky Way, and other stuff. But you know
Probably
how to
a
plot
few
a path.
gravity assists.
Yeah.
There is a question from Captain Comeback. And we were talking about the FTL, transmission of information, earlier. And he is mentioning that he often hears on future tech videos that FTL transmissions are actually not possible. But they do talk about the possibility of stuff like the Alcubierre drive. He's talking about Isaac Arthur. I'm not sure who that is. Captain Comeback is asking indeed if entanglement could be used to communicate faster than light, even before we develop a warp drive. However, it is my understanding when we talk about quantum physics in one of the past episodes, we discussed that quantum entanglement is not really a thing, in the sense that you can't really communicate with it.
You can't really communicate with it. That's true. It's a technicality. It doesn't. It also depends on how you interpret the meaning of information. And when you have to resort to those tricks, you know that it's not going to be useful. In some interpretations of quantum mechanics, entanglement is just an illusion. You think things are entangled when they're not. I don't know if we talked about this in the quantum mechanics episode.
Briefly, I think. I remember something on those lines.
No, there were multiple questions in that question. One of them was, is FTL really possible? The
Well, we said that
Alcubierre
already.
drive, probably. Yeah, I mentioned it briefly before. So the Alcubierre drive is one of these weird things that We don't know if it will be stable, but it's not forbidden yet. But there is debate. There are people trying to use some parts of GR and interpreting the equations in a way that if you actually tried to make one, it would collapse in the process of trying to make one. That's the kind of arguments physicists are currently having. Like, could you actually make one without it collapsing? Would it ever be stable? However, if you have one, you can make it move forward. I think that part is more okay. It's just like, would it actually stabilize? But it doesn't cause problems with faster than light stuff and the create. Did he mention something? Blah blah blah. Can you use it to travel back in time indirectly? So another concern is that if you could build something like an Alcubierre drive, there is a tweak you could make to it that would basically allow you to travel back in time, maybe, and that seems to be not allowed by physics.
Yeah, that's.
But it's not clear. Maybe that trick, if you try to play that trick on your drive, that would make it collapse. And then time travel is preserved, but you can still have a drive. So we don't know. It's
Right.
ongoing stuff. We don't have one because it requires negative mass anyway, of which we have none. So that's not great.
And no idea how to make.
There is one idea on how to make negative mass. But
Then
it
I am
doesn't
wrong.
seem to be harvestable. So this thing called vacuum energy, maybe you've heard it, the Casimir effect.
I've heard the name thrown around in talks that I have not understood.
It's
Yeah,
quite
we
easy.
mentioned it
So
briefly on previous shows.
so basically, in the vacuum, you still have particles popping in and out of existence all the
Oh,
time.
right,
This
yeah.
soup of like quick particles that don't exist for very long and they disappear. Now, which particles can materialize depends on how much space they have. So if you make a very, very small box, you are restricting what kind of particles are able to play this appearing-disappearing trick. Some of them can't do it if the box is too small. So you can try to harvest this by having two plates of metal really, really close to each other. So if you imagine that, outside of the plates in a vacuum, many types of particles are appearing and disappearing. So there's a lot of temporary particles outside the plates. But inside the plates, there's less of
this
them.
is the thing. They come
Because
together,
they can't
don't they?
exist. Yeah, so they can't exist in the middle because the space you've left them is too small. So there's less temporary particles. And because of this, the plates attract. And that actually happens, which is crazy. It's one of the great things explained by quantum field theory, that it's actually a real effect that we've measured. That this difference in amount of temporary particles actually makes the plates attract and creates a force, which is very cool. So it's energy from the vacuum, which technically is negative. But we don't know how to harvest it. Because even if the plates attract a bit, then you have to put energy in to make them apart again. Right, so now they've touched each other, great, you've got some energy out, but you still have to put energy in to separate them again. So you lose all the energy you gained, and not great. Can't really use it to make energy out of nothing. But technically it's negative energy.
Well,
Quite intriguing.
a few hundred years maybe. It's a shame that.
I hope not that. I hope that.
I don't know. I have this feeling that these kind of advancements we will not see during our lifetime. We will see maybe others, but these ones, it seems that they're a bit. I don't know. We just lack the basic tools to even start thinking of potential solutions.
Yeah, for these kind of things, or like cavemen looking at lightning.
Yeah,
like,
I
the
mean-
plates attract, great, new type of energy.
I mean, there are some
So-
things that we can actually
What?
look forward to. I don't know, like more, close distance space exploration, like in our solar system, stuff like that. But these technologies, faster than light, maybe they will happen, maybe they won't. But I don't see them happening in our lifetime, sadly.
Well, the best way to ensure that some humans will be around to carry on the research is to create colonies elsewhere. Just in case the Earth fails.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that's the first step.
Those generation shifts.
Before, well, not even. I mean, even going to Mars is an easier step. Or I mean, we can't jump to the other edge of the universe before reaching Mars. I mean, that just makes no sense. We need to. It's like to think ahead. It's nice to think ahead, but I mean, we need to take it step by step. No.
I hope we find Prothean ruins on Mars.
Promethean
would-
ruins.
Prothean ruins.
What's a Prothean?
Prothean is an extinct race we don't know about yet.
Yeah.
Ah,
Total Recall was the first. No?
To find Prothean ruins.
No, to find the ruins of ancient civilizations on Mars.
Don't know. Can't
I
remember.
don't
It's been so long since I've seen the original.
Yeah. Anyway, we have some other questions, I believe, from earlier. Let me check.
Yeah, I was wondering if we already went through them all.
No, well, maybe. Let me just. There was one from you, Chank, but I'm not sure if this is what we discussed about it already. Yeah, there is one from Chank about assuming the universal constant. Is there a debate of interstellar travelers assuming the speed limit is the first flow of such thinking? Maybe we just discussed about it without actually realizing. Yeah.
The
I don't know.
universal speed of light is not an assumption that's wrong. See, we've tried accelerating close to the speed of light. You can't do it. It feels like you become heavier the faster and faster you go. So general relativity in that part has been completely correct. If you just try to mindlessly accelerate, you cannot breach the speed of light. So it's not an assumption that we make, it's an observation by this point. You can beat it with tricks like wormholes or a Cuvier drive and the like. So it's not like it's impossible to travel faster than light between stars, but it's impossible to go faster than light on the top of space-time. That's been tested pretty strongly. Although, maybe when we have quantum gravity, we'll realize there was a trick we could have played all along. Like if you charge your particle in a special way, you're immune from that kind of effect. I don't know.
Oh,
In generation ships. I mean,
Oh no, I was gonna make the point that, of course, you know that I am prone to making horribly, terribly worded questions that don't make any sense.
You should write them down before asking.
It's kind of my thing, but no, it wasn't about.
I'm pretty sure your students are happy about that.
It was.
This exam question was so ambiguous.
It wasn't just saying that. I mean, obviously, we accept that the universal constant is a thing, but we accept it as a thing based on everything we know, and everything we know is then therefore itself based on the ideas of general relativity, right?
Yeah.
And
That's the problem. When you have a theory that's been tested in many ways, and it works on the things we can test, you tend to assume it's correct on the things we haven't tested too, because that's how we make the best guesses.
Oh yeah, well that's what people get confused about, like the scientific method. They're like, oh, the scientific method is to prove anything. And it's like, no, the scientific method is to basically somebody says something, and then 500 people go out of their way and spend years of their lives trying to prove it wrong. That's the scientific
Pretty
method.
much.
That is what the
Yep,
scientific
sounds like
method
Trying to figure out the
That
best.
sounds about right.
And if no one manages to, you have to give it to him. Maybe he's right.
Yeah, no,
But still, maybe.
exactly.
Maybe someone that can prove him wrong hasn't born yet, but maybe it will.
And we still need a better theory anyway, right?
Yeah, so it's
Yeah,
that is one of the main misconceptions about science. But
oh yeah, of course. But honestly, my question was just a random thing that I said, and then it's like literally as soon as I posted, I was like, "Well, isn't that exactly what the Alcubierre drive is? It changes it changes time, or not time, but it changes space for mass and then inverts them and all that good stuff. And oh, it's a mess.
I think that we discussed about. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that even if you ignore the fact that it's impossible to travel at the speed of light, say you were to travel at the speed of light. This is one of the few things I can do the maths on, because I'd learnt it last year when I was doing special relativity in high school. But time dilation and length contraction, it's essentially you'll probably know this already, Doctor, but for people who don't know, if you sub into the equations, I'm sure you can search them up, just look for length contraction and time dilation. If you were to travel at the speed of light, then 0 seconds would pass for you traveling at the speed of light, and an infinite amount of time would pass for someone observing you.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to length contraction, everything would appear 0 meters away from each other. And
Yep.
so you would perceive everything in the exact same point in 0 seconds. So you would, in essence, you would be spread across the entire universe if it wasn't for an outside observer essentially observing you to be this infinite mass object that would destroy the universe. So
I lost you at right before destroying the universe. I'm not sure.
Well-
I mean that last step seems a bit extreme, but I don't know. What do you have to say, Shobo?
Well, that's only true if you're trying to accelerate on spacetime. That's the entire point of special relativity as opposed to general, which is what you're talking about
Right.
with length construction and time dilation. Those are effects if you're trying to speed across the surface of spacetime. And actually reaching the speed of light is exactly as you say. Time would be infinitely dilated and space will be infinitely contracted from your point of view. And that's exactly what photons see. So particles of light are traveling at sea. They have no time. They exist always.
Okay.
photons never
Okay.
decay because they cannot experience time to do so.
Yeah, they don't experience time, and all space looks contracted. Photons have pretty weird lives.
All right.
But
So
that's only true if you're trying to force yourself across the surface of space-time, right? Which is not what an Alcubierre drive does. Actually, at the center of the warp bubble, space-time is completely flat, so you're not moving on space-time. The space-time is bending. It's like a wormhole, which is an easier thing because it's in sci-fi all the time.
So,
If you
okay.
bend space-time to make 2 points touch each other, you're not traveling on space-time very fast. You're just traveling through a shortcut.
all right.
So you don't get these effects.
So this
Basically.
gets me to a thing, and this is gonna piss off some people. So we remember the photon experiment where light was shown through like multiple slats, and rather than showing the direct position of a photon as it landed, it showed like the variation. There was blur between the slats.
Are you talking about an interference pattern?
Yes.
Right.
So if we could ride the pathway back along a photon at the speed of light where time is not moving, could we then ride forward again along the path of the photon to an alternative path from where we originally picked it up from?
Yes and no.
Damn
There's
it!
no quantum mechanics.
No, this is my idea for a science fiction. Like, because I've been writing this whole science fiction series based on a photon drive, and that's the whole concept behind it. Is
Oh,
Well, I
no.
mean, you can still take creative license and pretend that she cut out.
Well, let's clear. Why do you mean yes and no? What is
So-
yes and what is no?
It's quantum mechanics stuff, right? But let's assume the many worlds interpretation. What happens is the photon, when it's shown through the slits, went into two separate out-of-phase universes, but they were not far enough apart that they diverged. They came back when the photon hit the slit because the event of hitting the slit made them recombine. So the photon was in two places before it hit the slits. But it still ends up on the slit, except there's two versions of it that for a split second were separated and then they were combined again.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit confused. Are you talking about the version where it's one individual photon?
It's an individual photon.
Right, okay, cool. We're on the same track again. Sorry about that.
So the individual photon ends up on a point in the plate, but you don't know what path it went through. It could be one or the other. In the many worlds interpretation, it's both. It does both at the same time. The universes separate and then they recombine when the photon hits. And that's the most likely interpretation of what's going on.
All right, because I'm just curious because I literally have like 7 or 8 little mini short stories written. It's sci-fi shit, like OMSI magazine nonsense. But most of it's based on this thing that I've kind of come up with in my head called a photon drive, based on that idea of traveling back along the path of a photon and then traveling forward again along a path of that same photon that puts it in an alternate state, an alternate position in space.
So you're saying you're using photons as highways, and you just take a different
pretty much, like, yeah,
turn and
photons
just-
are basically like GPS. You go back to their source and then go out to where that same photon went to a different position, and you select that position to move your ship to that alternate position from where you
Sure,
are.
I mean, and just some models of time travel is allowed.
I think that if you like, if you assume something,
I'm a goofy
It's
sci-fi
a
like
model that-
Douglas
it's a
Adams
model that may
sci-fi
work.
writer. I'm not serious. I'm just having fun with it, but I want to be semi-accurate if I can be.
no. What I'm saying is, that's true for most sci-fi currently. Though they pick a model and assume it's true, and then work with that. So maybe your idea would work if you put some assumptions down, saying, okay, this works if quantum mechanics works this way.
And that's
No,
already more than most sci-fi does, so I wouldn't worry.
I mean,
At least you thought about it.
that's all sci-fi. I mean, you need to assume something,
No, but
otherwise.
good sci-fi is aware of what it's assuming. Bad sci-fi does it because it's cool.
Yes, but you still need to assume, because otherwise it's no sci-fi.
Yeah, but you have to be aware of what you're assuming, otherwise you end up with massive plot holes of why they're not using this technology for other stuff, if that's really how the world works.
Yeah,
so
no,
be careful.
But
Obviously.
so the basic the basic core the core concept of the Chang'e photon drive is at least conceivable and recognizable in modern physics, even if not achievable.
It's a non-deterministic model of time travel,
Yeah, pretty much.
where
Write it down. It's good. Write it down.
where universes branch, but they still all happen. That would be the overall framework. If you're allowed to do that, go back along the path of a photon and then go forward again, end up in a different place, then you are in a model of quantum mechanics with many worlds, and they all happen. So you might not be able to return to the one you started from, but it still exists.
Oh no, actually
That would be what it fits in scientifically.
that's actually one of the stories is trying to return and it not being possible. But okay, hey.
Oh, that's sad. That's very sad.
It's very
Steins
sad.
Gate, anyone?
Yeah.
Oh, Steins
But,
Gate. Oh, we need Michael in here. Michael.
I am here. Hello.
Hello.
What's happening?
Someone said
Yeah,
Steins
but
Gate
that-
and you woke up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not about space travel. That's more about time travel, though. So it's
Well,
It's a
that,
different
well, I mean
use
that's
for
the
space
thing. That's the
travel.
thing that you
If
talked
you
about
use
in my
Drive.
first in my. I asked one dumb stupid drunk question. What is time? And it led to 2 hours of conversation, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah, well, yes, it was good, but there's so
Ah,
I'm
much.
not here for that episode. I'm very sad.
Well, I don't know. It feels like some of the topics, like quantum mechanics, there was so much more to talk about, but we couldn't fit everything into one segment because we could go and talk about the individual interpretations.
Or touch on field theory in any shape or form.
Well, we asked you to do that. You didn't want to.
I can do a whole episode about this.
You said, "Oh, it's too hard."
If it was generic, like physics beyond quantum mechanics, that's fine. But field theory specifically, my god.
What do you mean physics beyond quantum mechanics?
String theory, M theory, all of these things.
Can we do that?
If we bundle them all in one, I probably know enough about them overall, but doing it just on field theory, you're really pushing
No,
me
we
there.
can. I mean, I think I did ask you if you wanted to talk about string theory or supersymmetry, stuff like that.
Theories of
Modified
everything could be a
Newtonian
topic.
dynamics.
Sorry, what?
Modified
What did
Newtonian dynamic. I'm saying it
Please.
wrong. Modified Newtonian dynamics. They don't
Please
work,
don't.
but they're fun.
Please don't. No, please don't. Not that.
I don't even know what that is.
Just don't. I mean,
What is that? Anyway,
it's very fringe physics. that
okay,
are- that are-
let's leave it for another episode, which will be about fringe physics.
Oh my god, please.
Fringe physics.
We will.
Physics.
Modified
Cringe
Newtonian
physics.
dynamics is the flat Earth of trying to explain the universe.
We will talk about all the fringe theories and laugh about them, right?
Oh my god.
No, we will
It's-
see them all. The
It's,
most
it's very
unscientific way we
tricky.
can.
It will be the
It's very tricky. People are aware of the really fringe stuff, the things that don't make sense, like flat Earth or moon landing denialists that you can easily disprove. And then on the other end, proper science.
it can be the comic relief episode.
But there's a whole weird area in the center where most scientists are like, eh. But then some people still manage to make it sound legit enough to get funding. So you get like one or two proper quotation marks research groups that actually get funding to do it, even though it's already been pretty much debunked. And so theories can live in that kind of strange fringe state. Or they linger on after they've been disproven, but they just hang around. They're like the zombies of science.
Right.
And modified Newtonian dynamics is the worst of them. Because
Well, we will discuss about it. But if people are interested, I think we can organize a show about what's beyond quantum physics. So, like,
theories of everything is probably a good enough title.
well,
The
that's-
contenders.
the
I didn't-
contenders.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I had a personal revelation. I meant to watch The Theory of Everything last Thursday in recognition of it being the anniversary of Stephen Hawking's death, but I didn't, and I feel guilty.
It's been a year.
Very, very
Yeah,
guilty.
it's been already a year.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Sorry for swearing.
Oh,
Oh,
you're
no,
you're
this is an
you're in a
R-rated
stream with
show.
Shanks Otome. I mean, come on, don't worry about it.
God,
Yeah,
it's been a
I mean,
year.
Shanks
we can do
Verotomi.
that. If Shaba, if you believe that you have that you are qualified to talk, at least, to summarize, because we, like stuff like string theory, we hear about it all the time. Supersymmetry, not much,
Yeah, sure.
but string theory is, again, we hear about it a lot, but I'm not sure that everyone knows exactly what it is.
no problem. String theory, M theory, supersymmetry, pros and cons.
Cool. So we'll keep that for one of the next weeks. So stay tuned. But talking about getting back for a bit about space exploration, we have a question from Basti Wonder, and which is actually interesting because I was thinking about that as we were discussing, and I meant to ask it, but it's so. we can't reach the speed of light, but we know that the universe is expanding and is accelerating. And I believe he's saying, will we be able to pass the local group eventually or not, because the universe will eventually start expanding faster than we could ever hope to travel. And I believe I remember a video explaining this, that eventually we won't even be able to see the light from other stars because they would be so far away that they're going faster away from us than their light can reach us.
Yeah,
So if that means that at that point, if we can't see them, we won't be able to travel to them either.
Okay. Yes, no. I know the video you talked about, but I think someone linked it to me. It's misleading. There are some stars that are far away enough that when they were born, they were already too far. So they were already moving away from us faster than the speed of light by the time they fired their first lights to reach us.
How do we know? We can't see them.
Assuming the universe continues beyond the CMB. So those stars,
so you assume that they exist.
we can never see. Those stars we can never see. To start with, we have never seen them before. We will never see them ever.
Then how do you know there are?
We don't. I'm just assuming the universe continues equally homogeneously beyond the CMB. There is a line of things that we can never see, because even when the stars were born, they were already moving faster away from us than the speed of light. So the expansion is faster than the speed of light. You can never get the light from them. It gets lost. But the stars that we can see, we will never stop seeing. That's not what will happen. It's the same effect as when you fall into a black hole. So space-time is dilating. These stars are eventually moving faster than light, but there is what you call the limit photon, the last photon that the star can send that will just about beat expansion. And the last photon will still take infinitely much time to reach us. So even in infinitely much time, we will still get that photon. So technically, we will always see those stars. We will just not see the new light they put out because the travel time becomes too much. I've probably lost everyone.
No.
Stars don't disappear. Even if expansion is faster than light, you don't see them literally disappear. The light from them just becomes more and more red and more weak.
No, but eventually...
They redshift out of visibility, but technically you always get photons from them. The photons that got lost close to the limit photon, which takes infinitely much time to reach us. So even in infinite time, we will still get that light, the final photon.
I'm not sure I understand.
That makes sense.
It's easier if I can draw it. But basically, there is light that the star will be able to send that will take arbitrarily much time to reach us. So say 10,000 years. It takes 10,000 years to reach us. That means in 10,000 years, we'll still see that light. If it takes 5 billion years to reach us, then in 5 billion years, we'll still see that light. And if the photon travels at exactly the same speed as the expansion, it takes infinite time. So in infinite time, we will still receive that one.
No, wait, how can you... Look,
I'm
when you
trying my
start...
best.
No, but when things start to use the word infinite, my brain just can't handle it, okay? If a photon is going to take infinite time, it means we will never see it. Because it
arbitrarily much. We'll still see it in 5 billion, we'll still see some in 100 billion. Arbitrarily much is a better word for infinite. There is a photon that the star will send, which will take arbitrarily much time.
Yeah, but
to
even
reach
if
us.
that happens, it's one photon. Okay,
but
once
the
that's
star
gone,
outputs photons all the time.
It's a fire truck constantly spraying its fire hose behind it while you're kind of drifting off to the side. But eventually, one of those splatters of water is going to hit you because it's constantly spraying water at you.
Even if the water takes a long time to reach you, there will be one that always hits you.
But that's it. Once.
It's the inverse of Zeno's paradox, where, you know, Zeno said that, you know, motion is impossible because you can never catch up with a turtle. It's literally the stellar space and time is the inverse of that. It says you will eventually catch up with everything at some point. You have to.
Yeah, but I understand that there is a photon that you will see, but that's one photon.
A photon is a shorthand for a ray. A ray is like a continuous thing because as far as we know, time isn't quantized. So it sends them continuously, literally continuously. It's like a ray of light.
But a photon is not a wave, it's a wave particle.
It's a wave. It's a particle wave. Okay, it's both. But because it's a wave, there will always be one.
Yeah, but one is one. It's not
At
like
least one.
like a blink, like a flash.
So the star is a circle, right? And each part of the star surface is sending a photon towards you all the time. So you'll see at least that much.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
I have to get this out of my head so that I can move past it. I'm just imagining something very silly in reference to the fire truck. We were talking about the fire truck spraying water in your general direction, and it will take a very long time to catch up with you. I'm just imagining that like 2 weeks ago you saw a fire truck, and then you're just out shopping, and just a ridiculous amount of water somehow hits you from out of the blue. It's very stupid, but now that I've said it in the open, I can now
Because
move past
photons, unlike water, don't slow down.
it.
Yeah, I'll have to ask you to draw this later, because I'm too stupid to understand this just by mentally visualizing it.
Well, TLDR,
Also because
stars
now-
don't disappear. They
because
just
now
become
I-
more red.
I've been going around, trying to look all smart, saying, yeah, one day everything will be darkness.
It will
And now you're
become-
saying that it's wrong, so that's embarrassing.
Yeah, it will
I'm
never
just-
be completely dark. By definition, it cannot.
That's embarrassing.
But it will become arbitrarily faint.
I've been spreading lies. I've been.
So no, it's like what you mean with infinite, right? Infinitely dark really means arbitrarily dark. It will become arbitrarily dark if you wait long enough.
Oh, so to the human eye, it will be dark.
Yes, the CMB will eventually not even be radio, and all the stars that are beyond our local
Oh,
group
come
will
on,
eventually be
so I
too
was
red.
correct.
To the human eye, yes, to the human eye, it will all redshift and vanish, apart from our local group.
What would happen if the wavelength of a photon became larger than the actual physical diameter of the universe? Or
There is
that...
nothing wrong with that, and the military have been trying to make it happen.
What?
I know this because I read about it. I was asking the same question. It's called ultra low frequency light. And the cool thing about it is that if light has a really, really, really long wavelength, it ignores any obstacles that are about the size of that wavelength. So if you make light with the wavelength of about the Earth, it will ignore the Earth as an obstacle. It passes through. Because light does that, being a particle wave. And the military use this by bouncing these lights off of the stratosphere to communicate with the other side of the Earth, by bouncing it off the atmosphere of the Earth. I shit you not, that's something that the military actually tried doing. It was implemented.
I gotta
That was
say,
why they nearly shot like a full ring of copper shards into orbit, wasn't it? Before they came up with the idea of just using satellites.
Yeah, and you can even send ULF from Earth. So they had these enormous, like kilometer-long copper rods on one side of the Earth that were sending ultra-low frequency, bouncing off the atmosphere to the other side of the Earth, and then answering that way. I think eventually they took them down because satellites are more efficient. But you can make those types of light. There's no problem with it.
I gotta say, y'all, like the past like 20 minutes have made perfect sense to me. So y'all need some redneck education, is what I'm thinking.
Maybe you're just drunk. You think they made sense.
No, it does. It's totally logical.
It's all true.
I'm glad. But yeah, ultra low frequency light, it's a thing. We can harvest it for stuff, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just very hard to build a receptor, because the size of your antenna has to be of the same order of size as the wavelength you're trying to catch. So if you made a transmitter the size of a galaxy, you need a receiver the size of a galaxy to ever receive it. So would probably not notice.
Ooh.
Okay.
You see, now I'm just thinking of a galaxy-sized satellite dish.
I know. It'll probably collapse under gravity, but...
Nightfall, do we want to close it on that last question from Basti? Which I think is a good one. I think that's a good question.
Yeah, indeed, because I don't think we have any other question left behind. So, Bestie Wonder is asking if a neutrino has a wavelength, and if yes, how long? Because it can go through stuff like what you mentioned now about very low wavelength light that can ignore objects. Is a neutrino such an example, or there is another reason for it to just ignore things?
Well, in quantum mechanics, everything has a wavelength, right? Nothing is a pure particle. Everything has a wavelength. You have a wavelength. Nightfall has a wavelength. Just for something that's really big, the wavelength is really small, smaller than the Planck length, smaller than anything practical. It means if you could ever face an obstacle small enough, your body would, technically speaking, diffract around it like a wave. Except in practice, it's completely impossible because that size is inconceivably small. The kind of obstacle you'd be able to do that with something like a person. A neutrino has a wavelength. So the wavelength of a thing is equal to the Schrodinger constant divided by its momentum. And the momentum depends on the mass, and the mass of neutrinos is unknown. So we've gone full circle now. They do have a mass, but we don't know what it is. So they have a wavelength, but we don't know what it is. The only thing we know about neutrinos is that there are 3 flavors, and we know that the sum of their mass is some number. So A plus B plus C is a number that we know.
Is it like the Mass Effect flavors, red, green, and blue? No.
Except one of them is really favorite, so it's probably not the same.
Okay.
But obviously green was the best. But
when you say when you say the Schrodinger constant divided by the momentum, what do you mean by that? Because I'm in high school, so I've definitely not gone into as much detail in the maths as you have. But last year I learned it as Planck's constant divided by the momentum. Are we just using 2 different words, or are those distinct things?
I thought it was the Planck length. I might be wrong.
What? You've been disproven by high school students?
No, it's Schrodinger's constant. It's just like the Planck constant divided by 2 pi, no? It's the same thing. It's not the Planck length. It's the Planck constant.
Well, no, I said Planck constant.
Yeah, not the Planck length. The Planck constant, which is the same as Schrodinger's constant, except divided by 2 pi.
Right.
It's h and h bar, right? They're the same thing, just divided.
Well, then where are you getting your 2 pi from? Because I've never done 2 pi.
If you learn Schrodinger's constant, you will see h bar everywhere. And if you see the constant h bar, it's just h divided by 2 pi. I've given you a tip to how to succeed in physics.
I have been seeing it everywhere.
Write it down.
Oh no, I already know what it is. I just wanted to see if... because I didn't know it was called the Schrodinger Equation, or the Schrodinger constant. But I did know that it was pronounced h bar, and I did know. In fact, last year, last year when I was doing Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, obviously it's at high school level it's h divided by 4 pi, and I asked if I could just do h bar divided by 2 pi. Because I'm weird, and because of the fact that it was only high school level that they would accept for a high school exam, I wasn't allowed.
No, don't use bars lightly. That's another good advice. If you want to do quantum mechanics, be very careful what bars you add, because if you change a d or a partial differential to a partial differential bar, you're changing something much more than a factor 2 pi.
Wait, I just realized you're not talking about pubs.
Also, nobody makes that kind of millimeter ammunition anymore. It's just not out there. That went out with Vietnam. So, we're still talking about science.
Yeah, I think it's getting too late for
also,
science.
You know, if you ever do actual research, factors of 2 pi and the speed of light, no one ever counts them. No one cares if it's wrong by a factor. You just work it out, and you have to actually work it out. It's really funny, actually. Any numbers like 2 and pi, we just ignore in the equations. All we care about is the scaling. Like the wavelength decreases when the momentum increases. That's all we care about when we actually do cosmology or particle physics or any of these things. When you actually want to make it practical, you have to backtrack all the way and add the constants like pi and 2 in. And it's really painful, and we don't like doing it. So we ignore them and we call it natural units.
Okay.
It's
So it's
the
similar to
worst
how.
thing.
So it's similar to how every charge, well, ignoring quarks, is it similar to how every charge is ultimately a multiple of the charge on an electron?
Yeah, pretty much. So
Right.
the mass of an electron is 1, the gravitational constant is equal to 1, the speed of light is equal to 1, because we don't care about any of these constants and we just delete them from the equations. What we care about is
That's cheating.
how things vary. Fundamentally in physics, it's about how things vary depending on each other. The constants you can always add later when you have time. Yeah.
So
proportionality.
what's the relationship of 3.14159 to that?
Everywhere.
3.141592653.
Oh, you beat me.
Yay!
Yay!
97932.
Sorry, what did you say?
We just
Shava?
recited pi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to know it. I used to know 1,000 digits.
Wait, you used to know how many?
I used to know 1,000 digits.
Square root of 2.
Guys. You remember 1,000 of it?
I used to know 1,000 digits of pi.
1,000
most
digits.
And I got to 2,000 on phi. Back when I had time.
1,000 digits of pi.
It's not that hard, it's just like a rhythm.
The first 9 is as far as I got, because it's just like, I don't give a shit.
I've not counted. I've just went with it. I just put it into my scientific calculator and remembered that, like where it's
Yeah,
rounded
well,
to.
you know what the worst thing is? For scientists, it's free. Everything's about free. Square root of 10 is about free. Pi is about free.
So,
Don't tell me E is 3 as well.
Everything's about free.
but here's why is that? Why is pi significant to Planck's not constant, but Planck's
Surprisingly.
measure, whatever you call it?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like in fundamental physics, pi is everywhere. And it's to do with the dimensionality of the universe, ultimately. Because the set, if you think about it, if you have a point anywhere in space, the amount of points that are a given distance from that point will always be a sphere. And a sphere is fundamentally has pi in it. The surface of a sphere is 4 pi r squared. The volume is still proportional to r cubed and pi. You get the pi again. So every time you try to measure something like the effect that the particle is having, it's having an effect in every direction. Therefore, it's a sphere.
So
and you have pi everywhere in physics, everywhere.
So what you're saying is round Earth confirmed.
3-dimension universe confirmed.
You know,
Round Earth
listening to
confirmed,
that,
everybody. We did it here on the radio, first time ever.
The
I've
Earth
been
is
listening.
not flat.
I've been listening to all of that, mentally substituting pi with a cake.
Cake everywhere.
Exactly. So it was very fun. Like if you re-listen to the broadcast and you think about cake every time that our doctor says pi, science becomes
Tasty.
somehow more understandable.
Everybody knows the cake is a lie. Everybody knows the cake is a lie.
Yes.
Oh yay! Portal references.
And
You're
on
too
that
young.
note, we are reaching the end of this segment. But before that, I would like to shout out because our doctor received a present
Oh
a
yes.
few days ago, and we wanted to mention it live. I hope that the people responsible for it are listening, and if they're not, if you know who they are, they may you may want to point them to this.
I'll do it. Huge thanks to Commander Shank, who got me the best fucking present ever.
What? Wait, what?
Shanks.
I think it's Ashnak.
It
My
was
God,
not
I
me.
don't know.
I didn't do anything. It wasn't me. It's not my
Look-
fault. Don't blame
Oh,
me.
I'm so sorry.
Good job.
No,
Good
I
job.
just, I'm at the bottom of my bear.
Yeah, that's what happens when she drinks. It's
Commander Ashna got me the best present ever. It's a lamp. It's a 3D printed lamp, where the surface of it is actually made after the Planck map of the cosmic microwave background. So when you turn it on, different parts are bright or dark, depending on what parts of the universe were more dense or less dense. It makes this pattern of the CMB in 3D.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's amazing, and there are some pictures. I think they were posted in the channel,
I took it to work, and my entire office had a freak out.
and that was actually great because, I mean, to me, that is just another piece of evidence that the elite community is just one of the best out there, because there was absolutely no reason for Commander Ashnak and whoever else contributed to this to just go out of their way just to thank our doctor to do what she enjoys doing. It was a way to thank her for her time, and we at Distant Radio also thank you. But I was actually amazed
Well, that's
when I discovered this, that someone went out of the way and shipped this like from another country and have it done customized for someone who, you know, they never met. It's just something that they never saw in any other online game. So it's just, I don't know, I'm without words. So if you guys are listening to this, like, thank you. Not, I mean, of course Sarah thanks you already, but I would like to thank you as well, just as part of the community, because it's just great. It's just great. And again, if you're not listening to this, maybe some of you guys know him, and just let him know that, you know, he's a great guy.
I gotta
It's
agree,
amazing.
and I gotta say it's a beautiful lamp, and now I feel like I'm put on the spot because I'm already asking Chank, what have you done for me lately? And now I feel like I need to do something for Showbot at some point, and I have no idea what the hell I can do.
Don't worry, just keep coming to the show.
I don't know. If you live in Japan, there's plenty of stuff you can send her.
Oh yes, so
I don't have a job and I'm in the same position.
I haven't seen the 3D printed Distant Worlds logo on the lamp. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's that. It was custom made with Distant Worlds 2 logo. It's so cool.
Oh man, now I want.
Yeah, that's
I have a better
a crappy picture, but we can take
I have a better
better
picture.
ones. Maybe we should post them on Fleetscom as well. Maybe
Yeah, there it is.
other people want to see it. We will do. Anyway, that was it for tonight. We will see what we will talk about next week. We had some good ideas already. And yeah, if you want to see the pictures of what we are talking about, just head over to the Dangerous Cosmology channel. But better pictures will be posted probably on Fleetscom during this week. So thank you again. If we don't have any more questions, guys,
Probably not. I think we can close it up here, as we just announced a few minutes ago.
cool. Then
I want to say thanks for letting me be here, because I've missed so many of these. Well, I haven't missed them. It's just that, I mean, obviously this is 7:30 in the morning for me at the moment, and I would be on my way to work. And
Oh,
Well.
sorry.
no,
You're always welcome.
no.
It's
It's not that. It's that, you know, I've got responsibilities to take care of, and I always listen to the shows, and I try to rebroadcast them and whatnot. But it's always a pleasure to listen to these things, and it's been a real honor to actually be here and be a part of the discussion, even though I know I mostly contributed to things going off track, and I apologize for that.
it's alright.
No, it's fine. You're always welcome.
Yeah, I am the host, and I am the first person bringing things off track, so it's fine.
And I'm the obnoxious Scottish guy.
Oh, we
Yeah,
got a Scottish guy. We got a
everybody.
Southerner. You got 2 hicks on your hands. You're in trouble.
What do you mean, heck?
Anyway, guys, that was it.
Yeah.
That was it. That's just. I think it is my duty as a host to stop this before it gets any worse. I'm doing some damage control here now. So yeah, let's be done with it. Let's go with some music now, and thank you again for listening in. This was Dangerous Cosmology with Dr. Commander Shoba. This has been Nightfall Zero, your host, and with me there was That Michael, Selfish Pie, and Chang Saotome. Thank you again for your time. And keep flying dangerously. Try not to crash before you reach Legal Point.
Yes. Good night, everyone.
See you next time.
Bye bye.
Good night. Bye.
Good night.
All right. Clear.
Nice.
You see, I was very stupid at the end there because I threw my arm up in agreement and then immediately realized no one can see me.
Okay.
Happens to me.
It's fine.